friends, it's Taylor, and you are listening to the Chasing Wonder podcast. This is just a show where we talk about how to try to find a little extra in our ordinary and how to find some wonder out in the world that we're dealing with and living with every day, how we can find the magic that exists all around us. I've been exploring with you all over the last few weeks some stories from my childhood and just kind of looking at them, through adult eyes. It gives you some interesting perspective. Today I've got a fun story I want to share with you, but to start, I want you to think about when you were a kid, was there a certain rule that your parents had? Maybe your mom or your dad had a certain rule they always harped on. And I'm not talking about big important rules. I'm talking about small things like don't leave the cap off the toothpaste or take your elbows off the kitchen table. What was it for your parents? What was the thing that they always focused on? A little over a year and a half ago, I had the privilege of presenting at a conference for mothers of young children, and there was 3,000 mothers at this conference. And I thought to myself, what could I share? And then I remembered a song that I had written for my mom for Mother's Day as a gift a few years back. And so right now we're going to share the audio from that moment at the conference, little Beatles parody about stuff that mothers say. Check it out. But this is just a little song I wrote for my mom to remind mom that we haven't forgotten all those things that you all say to us. Stuff mothers say. As kids we hear it every single day. Like call when you get there so I know you're okay. If you make a funny face, it's gonna stay that way. Go comb your hair. Brush your teeth. Always wear clean underwear. If you can't talk nice, say nothing and don't stare. If God wanted your nose pierced, you'd already have a hole there. Do you think money grows on trees? This'll hurt me more than it hurts you. You're like a bull in a china closet. Do as I say, not as I do. Where's the toothpaste cap? Kids in China are starving. You better eat all that. When your father gets home, he's gonna hear about that. I'm gonna count to 3. You better change your act. 'Cause I didn't ask who put it there. You kids drive me crazy. Why do you have to shout? Just remember I brought you into this world. I will take you. But seriously, without our moms, who knows where we would be? We'd lose our heads, go deaf from MTV. We would have followed that one kid off a bridge into the sea. Good thing we remembered all those things you say. So let's make every day our Mother's Day. Thank you, moms! Well, did I guess the thing that your parents always said as a kid? If I missed it, send me a message, let me know. I was thinking about that moment as I began preparing for the podcast this week and thinking of what I wanted to share with you all. You see, when I was a kid, my parents split up when I was pretty young, and my stepdad, Frank, had 3 daughters from a previous marriage. So when he married my mom, instantly it went from just being me and my sister to me and 4 girls, and I was the only boy. And then later, when my dad remarried, he married my stepmom, who has 3 daughters of her own from a previous marriage, bringing the grand total to girls 7, boys 1. And so I was caught in this kind of outnumbered Brady Bunch scenario. Let's just say that I played my fair share of dress up, and I was in at least 2 Wham cover bands. And so not only was this an interesting environment to grow up in, but then moms, like we just talked about, have certain rules that they all adopt. And sure, there's like the basics that we all agree on as parents. But I feel like each mother chooses a specialty to focus on and to make the focus of nearly every conversation. For my mom, the most important thing in the world for a season was, don't go outside without your shoes on. Well, one day my sisters and I were especially bored. We were at home alone, and my oldest sister, Cindy, was the one who was in charge, and she came up with this brilliant idea. She said, let's play Follow the Leader. Now, to this day, I can't tell you why Follow the Leader is such a huge game when you're a kid. I think maybe it's the fact that, when you're younger, you generally don't get to be in charge of anyone else. You can't really tell other people what to do. But when you play this game, you make all the rules. And so the game was on, and we did everything from awkward dance moves to pathetic beatbox sounds. And then Cindy decided that she was really going to take the stakes up to a higher level. She wanted to see if we would really follow her every move. And so what she did is she walked out the front door. I can still feel my heart beating and the exhilaration I felt walking outside on a Saturday afternoon without my shoes on. First of all, we were not even supposed to be outside, but remember, Mom's number one rule, don't go outside without your shoes on. I imagine that it was the same rush that Marty McFly felt when he hit 88 miles per hour. One by one, we filed barefoot outside, down the driveway, and to the corner of our block. Now, Cindy, our fearless leader, hesitated for a second. Perhaps she was debating the trouble she might get into, or maybe she was kind of like sizing us up to see if her troops had what it took. But a second later, she stepped into the crosswalk, and one by one, we unwaveringly followed her to the park across the street. Now, this was Saturday, so the park was very busy, but none of us cared. We didn't worry about the strangers around us or what they thought of our ridiculous dance moves. We laughed and we sang and we had a ball. In fact, we were completely oblivious to the world around us and had no idea that we were headed directly toward our demise. Now, this is back in the 80s, and the parks had built-in barbecue grills. That was a big thing. You would go to the park, and you would bring your charcoal and your lighter fluid, and you would make a barbecue, and then you would grill up, your burgers and your hot dogs and all of that. And the way these barbecues worked is they had these huge levers that would allow you to dump out the old ash. After everything cooled down, you would tilt it and it would dump the old ash out. You could sweep it up and it would make room for new coals the next time you wanted to cook. Well, that day somebody had finished barbecuing, and rather than allow the coals to cool down in the grill, they dumped them out on the sidewalk right in front of the playground. And this must have happened just before we arrived, because as Cindy's foot hit the first of the hot coals, she let out a huge scream. Ah! And she started doing high knees like a football player at practice. Now, keep in mind, we are in the middle of an intense game of Follow the Leader. None of us were looking at the ground. None of us knew she stepped in hot coals. We just saw her doing high knees and going, ah! And one by one, we started to follow her lead. Ah! 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 And one by one, we copied her moves as we followed her on a firewalk that would have impressed Tony Robbins. Once we realized what happened, panic and blisters set in. We huddled around the drinking fountain and we took turns putting our feet in the water, trying to cool them down, because no matter how bad this pain was, it was nothing in comparison to the lecture that we were definitely going to receive from Mom when we got home. We waited for a while, and then we began the painful walk back home in order to receive what to this day is the world record for the longest I told you so. That was the first time that I remember thinking you should be pretty careful who you follow. You can't assume that the leader knows best just because they ended up with a title, or that they see everything and are looking out for you. This is true in organizations and nations. Throughout history, blind faith has led to heartache and destruction. People stop wondering for themselves and just look to others to tell them how to act and how to think. Several years ago, I found myself at the top of an org chart in a very unhealthy organization. Leadership was lacking in both heart and direction. And what started out as an initiative built on love and community had devolved into a production whose only object was money and fame. It didn't happen overnight. Much like our game of Follow the Leader, leadership slowly started making risky moves in the wrong direction. And one by one, the staff, the volunteers, and the community followed. When you're a kid and something that started out as fun becomes dangerous, it isn't very easy to stand up and say no. It may not be what you signed up for, but you have all these emotions tied into it. You still want to be a part of the group. You still want to play the game. I did the same thing for many years in this corporate environment. I did things that I'm ashamed of, and I hurt people that I loved because I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. But then one day, I started having some wonderful conversations with Katie, and we would talk about what life could look like if we chose a different path. I wondered if we could find real community. I wondered if we could be in a healthier place as a family. I wondered if our career and our passions could line up. These conversations helped us to know what decisions we had to make. Friends, I wouldn't change the life that we have now for anything. And it all happened because we started to wonder if there could be something extra in our ordinary. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to know what you're doing to chase wonder, what challenges you're facing, what topics you'd like to discuss on the show. If you've got ideas or things you'd like to discuss, or if you have a story that you'd like to share and have it be part of an episode, leave us a voicemail at 323-524-7456. Again, it's 323-524-7456. Leave us a message there on the Wonder Hotline, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Friends, I'm hoping that you have an absolutely incredible day, and until I see you next time, keep chasing wonder.